Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Good Morning Soul. I hope you guys are having another wonderful day. And today I wanted to talk about everyone's favorite piece of art, and that is reading. And I say that as a joke, but reading is so incredibly underrated as a genre, or I say genre, but as a medium. Like, it's kind of the best art. Like if you want to talk about a medium that has like the fewest distractions and the fewest like things to interrupt the art process, that would be it. And sure, I don't have any idea of what goes into publishing a book. I don't have any idea of like what publishers do to like be like, oh, you can't have this in the book, oh, you can't have this in the book. But like, anyone can write a book, anyone can put as many ideas as they want into the book, and anyone can really self-publish the book, at least like online. They can at least like put it somewhere. And that's kind of a very beautiful thing. And I'm not here to just suck dicks for reading. I will say that I am not a good reader. I'm not a good reader anymore. Nowadays, I only read like a handful of books a year. I do want to try and change that, but there's so many things I try to do, like it's hard to keep up with all of it, right? But I do love books. I have always loved books. Aside from one point in my life. So growing up, I remember I used to hate reading books. Like I couldn't think of something I wanted to do less than read. But as time went on, I do remember like a specific time, like whenever in school they would try to make us read, I'd be like, fuck, I don't want to read. I remember my mom like trying to figure out ways to force me to read, try to like, because that's what parents did with their kids. My mom, I remember, would read to like my brother and I would just clock out mentally. Like I remember she tried to read us Harry Potter and my brother was into it, and I would just be like playing with toys while she read. And then I remember at one point I was kind of like, are they in like Hogwarts yet? And then my brother just looked at me like, yeah, they've been in Hogwarts for like a while now. I was like, fuck. Like, I was a dumb kid. But then there was a point in time, like, obviously it was encouraged for us to read. I remember like we'd get like, whenever we read a book back then in elementary school, we would like go to the computer and like they have these little things where they like quiz you on like what the book was about to make sure you read it, and then they'd give you points based upon like how well you did in the quiz. And so with those points you actually got to buy stuff. Like once a year we'd have like this little community thing where you get to spend all the points you get to spend all the points that you've collected reading all these books. And over the years, I never got any points. But then things started to change. I remember there was a long car ride, and I remember just complaining to my mom, like, I'm not going to have anything to do on this car ride. We were going to my cousin's, and it's like an hour plus long drive, and I was just kind of bummed about having nothing to do. And my mom was just kind of like, well, bring a book. And like at this point, like I don't know why, normally I think my reaction at the time would have been like, but reading's stupid. But for whatever reason, I decided to grab a Harry Potter book and bring it on the car ride. And that entire car ride, I read that book and I got really into Harry Potter. I remember even after we got there, I just kept reading. I was like, oh, hi guys, whatever. And then like after like 20-30 minutes, I just kept reading. I kept reading, and I like obviously had seen the Harry Potter movies, like the first like 3 or 4 around this time. So I was like comparing the differences between the movies and the books, and I was like, wait, the book's like better than the movies. So at that point I was kind of like, okay, let's keep reading. And then I read the second and third one, like that we just had lying around the house. And I remember like my mom like took us to a bookstore, and she was like, she would try to get us into reading, and she was like, I want to make sure you guys are going to actually read these things I buy. And I was like, just buy me the rest of the Harry Potter books. Like, not the rest of them, I think just like 4 and 5 or whatever. I think even the third one I bought at that bookstore, and then she bought them for me, and I read the fourth one. Big ass book. For a kid, I was way too young to be reading big ass Harry Potter books, and I'm surprised not more of it went over my head, because they get pretty in depth. The fifth one, I remember like right when I finished the fifth one, my sister, she had like the sixth one lying around, and like she didn't bring it with her when she moved, and like so I got to have it, and I read through that one. I have all of these in hardback now, so my Harry Potter collection is, pretty on point. And then the seventh one, I just happened to get for free, because we had bad renters who were renting a place out from my mom, and then we ended up getting a bunch of their shit, because that's a whole story in itself. But I got the seventh one for free, and then read through the fifth one, read through the sixth one, read through the seventh one, and when I was done, I read like Holes, I read like the books we would read in class, Number the Stars, Where the Red Fern Grows, stuff like that. And Goosebumps books, I was really into Goosebumps books. I read through Garfield books, anything that like interests me in our elementary school library, I read. And eventually that other stuff wasn't doing it for me, and I just ended up rereading all of Harry Potter. I've read through those books twice now. And when I was done, I really wanted to read different stuff. And I remember Percy Jackson was a series that was really getting hyped in my school. Like they showed us like a video of like the author like in this camp place, and he was reading in front of the kids. And it looked like this cool thing. I remember this guy named Zach from like third grade. He was really into it, and so I remember being in a bookstore, and I was like, "Hey, you can buy me this Harry Potter book, or not this Percy Jackson book, Mom." And I also read a series of Unfortunate Events. That's like 13 books right there. And so after I read all of those, I think I read those after Percy Jackson, now that I think about it. But with Percy Jackson, I read the first one in like 2 days. I fucking love that book. The Lightning Thief. Like, if you want to know how much I love that book, I'm thinking about getting part of it tattooed on me. Like, that's my favorite book series, by the way, Percy Jackson. I fucking adored those books. Right after I read the first one, read the second one, read the third one, read the fourth one, and by the time I finished the fourth one, that's when the fifth one came out. That was the last one. It was called The Last Olympian. It was the first hardcover one, and it had a sexy ass cover with like the kid, Percy Jackson, the main character. He's riding a Pegasus. The Pegasus name is Bojack. It's like this black Pegasus, and he's flying around the Empire State Building. I'm sure I'm going to reread and review all of these one day, and that will probably be like a big ass video for me. So I don't want to like tell you everything that these books are about, but Percy Jackson was my shit, and that was kind of like the height of my reading, like going through the Percy Jackson Harry Potter books. And as time went on, as I started to enter my teenage years, obviously I developed a lot more interest. I got more into all these other art mediums, and books are fucking expensive even nowadays. That's probably one of the main reasons why I can't read, because if I go to a bookstore and buy like 2 things, it'll be like $30, and it's so hard for me to pick up a book nowadays. Like, there's still Percy Jackson books coming out today, like within like that universe. It's not the same series, but it's the same universe. And like the last 2 that came out, like the next Magnus Chase book and the next Hidden Oracle book, I don't know, I can't like bring myself to read it. I've tried a couple other series that I've bought. I try to get into the How to Train Your Dragon books just because I love the movie so much. That's a very kiddie book series though, so it's kind of like I don't really want to read this, but I kind of want to read it for the sake of my love for the movie. And that's kind of where I'm at. Like, it's hard for me to read nowadays, and I'm trying to be a writer. And to be a writer, you have to read. And I'm at a point now where it's like, oh, like, I need to read more. I need to. But, like, I think a part of it is, like, I haven't found, like, an amazing series, like, in a while. Like, the Mortal Instruments books, I remember I read those, like, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then I stopped after that because that's when, there was more of them that came out later, but there wasn't at the time, right? I really love that series. I think I like that even more than Harry Potter. The first, like, I tried to reread them, but the first one the first half of it kind of sucks. And, you know, that doesn't have a good movie series. I know there's a TV show out for it now, but the movie for Mortal Instruments just kind of sucked. Same for Percy Jackson. The Percy Jackson movie sucks. Both of them do. And I read a couple. I remember I read Twilight, the whole series. I really read those kind of for the sake of shitting on them. You know, I was doing reviews at the time, and like, I really loved debating it. Like, I remember Jeremy Johns, like, his movie reviews for those were great, and I really liked talking shit about Twilight. Like, I hated all of them, but for whatever reason, like, I kept reading them just so. And I remember, like, there was a couple other people who would watch Twilight, and I would get into, like, these debates with them on, like, why this character is such a terrible character. Why is this romance, like, a broken romance? Why is this, like, such a tedious plot line within the series? That kind of stuff. How the climax of the whole series is bullshit. How, like, fucking gross it is that the main dude is, like, 90 years old and he's fucking an 18-year-old. And how the other romance option is, like, bestiality. Like, how gross that was. And how that bestiality grew into, like, a pedophilic bestiality. There's a romance in Twilight between a small half-vampire child who's, like, 8 and a grown-ass werewolf man. It is disgusting. It is a disgusting series. But goddamn, did I love talking shit about it. Oh my god. I would blame, like, a bunch of the stuff I've read later, like, kind of being part of the downfall to my reading, like, not having that interesting of a series to read. And nowadays, like, I'll still read all of John Green's books. Those are amazing. And I'm just not really into the whole, like, big fantasy stuff anymore. Like, some of it is just too much for me. Like, I've cracked open at least, like, 6 series at, like, Aragon, stuff like that, where I'm just like, high fantasy is hard to read for me. Like, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, that shit's hard to read. They'll throw so many names at you and, like, not explain it. They don't. The way storytelling should work, and even like podcasting, stuff like this. When I tell a story, like, even podcast form, I start from, like, where I started on the journey, right? So, like, even when I write a story, I'll give you something to understand and go from there. When I start a podcast like this, I get, like, for instance, this one, I started back when, like, I didn't like reading, and then how I got into it, right? That's how it's supposed to work. High fantasy, a lot of time, it's like, oh, you're in the middle of fucking wherever the fuck, and there's this guy, and he's picking up a dragon egg, and he's bringing it to Nerfgaw, and Nerfgaw is the guy who, you know, he's Nerfgaw. Everyone knows Nerfgaw. And, you know, it costs a lot of shinnings to get a dragon egg, so it's a big deal. But Aragon's father, Dengo, he fucking doesn't approve of blah blah blah. Like, it's fucking hard to read. But I think that's part of the territory. And I've been past the 10-minute mark, so I'm gonna close out this podcast. That was my introduction to reading and where I'm at with reading in general nowadays. Please recommend me good books. If, like, even though reading's fucking expensive, I will invest if I know I'm gonna be able to read that series. But until then, this is where I'm at. But I would like to thank you guys, as always, so much for watching, and I'll see you guys tomorrow morning with another episode of Good Morning Soul. Later, and with that, I leave you.